Alrighty, so today I thought we would go over a quick guide on how to use Umbra as a solo farm frame in the Index. Now, before we get deeper into the builds and the enemies and all these other things, it's important to note that for this to work, you must start in the dojo, as starting your Index instance in the dojo will put you into the outdoor map, the map that is better for points, spawns, and less bugs overall. How this solo farm works is that specters and enemies that spawn in the Index, when they die and they have points on them, the points that they drop multiply. Now, 1 point may turn into 1, but as you get to higher numbers, they multiply even higher. Due to this, and using this mechanic, what you have Umbra do is sit down, destroy the enemies, and you let the specters turn the points in. If the enemies or specters die, you get more points out of it. Now, it is so easy to get caught up in this method that sometimes you may accidentally let the timer run out at the beginning of the match, so it is very important to always pay attention to those first, 200 seconds, because sometimes the specters may not turn in fast enough to ensure that you do not run out of time, and so you may need to intervene yourself. And lastly, before we move on, is to keep your map up at full size when you're playing in the Index and sitting down near your Umbra, because seeing where those specters are going helps you kind of know when you need to intervene, and perhaps if they're bugs spinning in circles, which can happen and has happened multiple times in the Index. Alrighty, moving on to the enemies that you will run into in the Index, includes all of these that you see here, excluding of course a Lockjaw and Soul, which cannot be summoned as far as I'm aware in the Simulacrum. Aside from the many pulls and tethers you'll run into in the Index, which can be easily disposed of with weapons, the biggest issues you'll see are Lockjaw and Soul Bombs, which can destroy your Umbra as he spawns in or as he is guarding, and Translocators. These little devices that allow enemies and specters to transport instantaneously can create gaps in your defense of your goal. Now, later on, this may not matter, as you will have many seconds built up that even 100 points turned in will not put a dent in it, but in the earlier stages, a Translocator can be a problem, considering if they're placed near the goal, you would not have very much time to react. Again, another reason why we will be using Magus Lockdown. Alright, let's move on to bugs. So, there are many bugs in the Index. One of the most vital ones I've run into before is one where I essentially became a ghost running around the Index. This can be triggered by a transference issue, and you will be able to move through the map and around it, invincible, unable to die, but the problem is that you cannot pick up points or turn them in, however you can still shoot. Now, this bug was exacerbated by having a melee weapon on. I hit R3 to attack with a melee weapon, and instead I ended up falling through the world infinitely for 30 minutes, as my ally scrambled to finish the mission. This was not enjoyable. So, from then on, I've decided to make sure that I do not carry a melee weapon on me in the Index, as you can see here. Secondly, it was an issue to grab ammo, because ammo can only spawn so often, and so I make sure that I have a weapon that has Pax Charge on it. This prevents the issue should this ghost bug ever happen again. I infinitely have ammo to make sure that I can still kill enemies. Some other bugs you might run into include the Mag Spectre, casting Polarize and causing your Umbra and other Spectres to jump into the air harmlessly. Another bug that you'll often run into, well, always run into if you have a Wukong Spectre in your team, is that he cannot pick up points, as shown here. This essentially eliminates one of your 3 sources of getting points, which is a big problem. It does definitely slow down your efficiency. But perhaps the most damaging bug is the bug where specters will start spinning in circles, not turning in points, not damaging anybody, and become completely useless. The only way to fix this bug is to restart the mission by leaving, which is why it's a good idea to keep an eye on your map to be aware when this starts happening. Now moving on to builds. The aura mod that we choose to use here is Shield Disruption. Shield Disruption allows for the removal of some of the shields that the later enemies will have. These later enemies, at level 100s and higher, can be very challenging to deal with because their shields are so large. Our gun is built around radiation damage to allow for quick alloy armor shred. All of the enemies in Index have alloy armor. Due to this, radiation is a good choice. Secondly, you'll want to replace his first ability Slash Dash with an ability that's quick to use and benefit your frame. I choose Eclipse. The map is always going to be light, so you'll get the damage bonus no matter where you are. More importantly, with this ability, instead of Slash Dash, he won't be moving around to hit enemies. He'll stay in one spot, hopefully. Sometimes he'll move around. But he'll stay in one general area, instead of dashing at any enemy he sees, or even dashing off the map. Due to this, you want to build strength in order to increase the damage increase you obtain from this. But secondly, you'll want to also give him a lot of health and armor. This will keep him alive longer when he is out in his Spectre mode. And last but not least, I like to run Natural Talent because it will reduce the casting time of the Radial Howl and the Eclipse, which he will cast while he is in Spectre mode. Moving on to Arcanes, we have Arcane Nullifier here to help prevent magnetic procs, and Arcane Deflection to prevent slash procs. These do work on his Spectre mode, but most Arcanes do not work on his Spectre mode. Through a lot of testing, I have found that these are the two that seem to be the best at the time. Now, moving on to our primary weapon. I choose to use the Kuva Comb, as due to its many pelts and the fact that it is used by an AI, all of those pelts hit. It is a high damage, high fire rate weapon, and does not require reload when used by Umbra. This makes it an ideal weapon for use by an AI. The damage I use on it include radiation and toxin. The magnetic is innate on the weapon, and is helpful for shredding shields faster. If a magnetic proc takes place, that shield takes a lot more damage. The radiation helps shred through alloy armor, as with radiation damage, 75% of alloy armor is ignored, and the damage is increased by 75%. Then we have Toxin damage, which comes innately on the Riven, allowing for us to do health damage while the shields are being removed. And lastly, as we went over earlier, Apex charge weapon. Any can work, I just prefer the Catch Moon, and so I use this. Just in case that Spectator Bug does happen where I become a ghost and I'm unable to do anything. Now onto the Tenno skill tree. You will be using Vizarin. Vizarin will allow you to keep Umbra alive longer, and in the later levels, keep him alive at all. Oftentimes, the later levels, Umbra will die immediately upon spawn due to maybe a Lockjaw soul hit or another enemy hit. This will allow you to make him immune upon spawn and keep him there immune as long as needed. Now, as for Tenno Arcanes, the two you'll want to end up using are Magus Repair and Magus Lockdown. Magus Repair will allow you in Void mode to heal your Umbra passively over time, hopefully keeping him alive, and also making sure that he receives the health he is lacking when you spawn him in. This health he is lacking is due to the financial stress debuff that you receive during high index and per point you have on you. For each one, your max health will be reduced, but when you spawn him, he will spawn with that amount, and his max health will be as much as your normal amount is. This will allow you to heal him quickly upon spawn. Secondly, we have Magus Lockdown, an invaluable arcane, allowing you to stop enemies in their tracks, giving Umbra enough time to dispose of them, and it can be used to protect Umbra if too many enemies are currently surrounding him. Alrighty, so now we're on to gameplay. Now the first thing you want to do when you spawn in is you want to choose your position. You want to choose where you're going to put Umbra down for the mission. Now this can shift throughout the mission. Beginning, usually I like to put him here, as he has a view to the left, the middle, and the right. But later on in the mission, as enemies become higher damaging, you may need to move him back so that he has the wall cover as you see here. With this wall here, he can only be shot from the front and the right, which reduces his damage incoming, and he can still shoot anything that shows up in his line of sight. But perhaps the best bonus you get from placing him near this wall is that slinging through him to give him that immunity is so much easier because you don't risk dashing further than you wanted to. Now, for the beginning stages, generally you just want to keep an eye on your map, keep an eye on the specters, and make sure that all the points are turned in as needed. If your time is about to run out, then you may need to go put in some points and make sure that your timer gets back up to a reasonable level. Now, if you see Umbra running around, running off the map, or even sitting down, that's completely normal. Just replace him until he doesn't keep doing it. Alright, now we're going to move on to the mechanics that keep Umbra alive. So first we have Magus Repair, which you can obviously understand as you stay in your Void mode, which you're using to use your Void Dash. you will be healing him over time. And you'll often be sitting in this to both keep yourself invincible, so you can sit, and also to keep him alive. Now, there's going to be times later on, or even earlier on, where he's going to get one shot, or he's going to be destroyed very quickly. And you're going to need to use your Void Dash, or rather Void Sling, to keep him alive. Now, there's different methods to apply this. You can either go from the top down, as you see here, or you can go to the side. When you go to the side, you do risk going a bit further than you intended to, if you don't aim properly, which can lead to you having to replace Umbra as he moves to a different location because you left his leash range. So do keep that in mind when you're using your Void Dash. The next point to cover is the point drop cap. So, essentially what happens is, eventually, let's say you see a mag with 100 points. When they die, they may end up dropping 70 points. And often when this happens, you'll see other points around the map sort of disappear. And then all the points will conglomerate on that point where that person died. This is because only a certain number of points can be on the ground at once, and earlier points will be removed in order to allow this. And so, sometimes you may see a Spectre about to die with a ton of points. That gives you the indication that either you need to Void Dash them and escort them to the goal, which don't forget that you can Void Dash your Specters, but also it may mean that you just need to grab some off the ground, save them on yourself, while Umbra kills everything, save them for the next round, and let the Specters turn in, or you go turn in and complete the round. And oftentimes it is a good idea to keep attention on the points, because you may save a lot of points by you turning in those last 1 or 2 points, or even sometimes, in the case where there's a lot of points in the ground, you going and turning in those 40 points so that cap doesn't get reached, as you see here. In that same vein, another reason why you would want to pick up points before a Spectre does is because they have too many for what the goal needs. Because if they turn in 70 when you only need 30, they just wasted 40 points. So you may want to scramble to grab those 30 off the ground, turn in, so that they turn in for the next round, as to not waste points. And last but certainly not least is Magus Lockdown. You'll use this to make sure that enemies don't just zoom by to the goal as Umbra is focusing on someone else, or even better yet, it can be used to assist Umbra. Perhaps he's surrounded by a group of enemies and you need to lock them down to prevent him from dying so that he can drill right through their health bar. Overall, it's a wonderful arcane for this game mode. And with gameplay covered, now I'd like to go over helping friends. So you can, as you see here, bring a friend in. They can just sit around, hang out, and let you do your business while the Spectres carry all the points and you focus on what's going on. In this case, the friend I had with me was a Limbo, just sitting back in the Rift. And that's wonderful, you can do that, but just know that you will have reduced efficiency as you are down one Spectre, and so things will go a little bit slower, so just keep that in mind when you're choosing to do this. And I do want to leave off saying that I'm not going to make some crazy claim that this is always going to get you, 3-minute rounds or 4-minute rounds. The harsh truth is that this can vary, especially depending on your Specters, and bugs. It can vary anywhere from 2.5 minutes per round to 7 minutes per round on average. But I've had runs where I've done 15 rounds in 45 minutes, and I've had runs where I've gotten 5 rounds done in 30 minutes. So it varies very much on if bugs show up and what kind of Specters you get. And of course it'll also depend on, like I said, if you have a friend joining you. If you have a friend joining you, it's likely going to go slower. Alrighty, with that all being said, I'd like to thank everybody and anybody who decided to watch this video. Hopefully it helps some people in the Warframe community. If anybody is interested in seeing longer form content instead of the short, goofy clips I post sometimes, then do let me know. And if you did like this video, please do hit that like and subscribe button if you want to. And I would like to personally thank Mr. Trainman himself, Rahetalius, for allowing me to use his beautiful and wonderful music in this video, and I do recommend checking him out. Make sure you all have a wonderful day.